Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synchronic Saturdays with Megan and Crystal. Today, we're going to be discussing the spectrum of extroverted sensing. So, every cognitive function, if you've been following along in our high vibe, low vibe series, every cognitive function can manifest differently across a spectrum. And we use the terms high vibe and low vibe to sort of explain how the lowest vibe, the most underdeveloped version might manifest in this way, whereas the highest vibe might manifest on the other end of the spectrum. But no matter what, the cognitive function has the same root to all of the different types of behavior. And the reason why Crystal and I find it important to talk about the cognitive functions in this way on this podcast is because when you are learning cognitive functions, you need to learn to look at the why behind the behavior and not just track the behavior, because what you might find is that maybe a low vibe version of one function might manifest in a very similar way as like a high vibe of another function. And so like,
oh yeah, so
you
true.
Can't just like track the behavior into like different, anyway. So
you have to like see the behavior as a spectrum.
Yes.
And then observe over time where this person falls on the spectrum.
And it's like we're kind of training you to like track the pattern of the function no matter what behavior the person's doing, because we believe that anyone could do anything.
And isolated instances of people doing things don't necessarily reveal the functioning behind why they're doing it. So it's important to define it as a spectrum. So I guess I'll start off. I feel like extroverted sensing is one of those functions that like not a lot of people in the type community necessarily know a lot about, because when we look at the demographics, there aren't as many SPs, aka like conscious SE users, who navigate these forums explaining how SE works in, I guess, somewhat of a NE way. Like I feel like they can't really comment on what's really going on, but I feel like through my adventures befriending and attracting multiple SPs in my life, I have started to kind of notice, I guess, like what they're all about. And a lot of stereotypes seem to buy into this idea that like, oh, SPs they're like YOLO, the authors of YOLO, just do it, blah, 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 like thrill seekers. And yes, while I think this is true, I feel like we have to take into account that when you look at an SP, what you don't always see is the undercurrent of introverted intuition and that is lining their motives behind why they're even doing things. Like at their core, they follow a very consistent abstract philosophy behind everything they do. And for me, at least, only observing them in moments of crisis do I really see, I guess, the true them in that sense, and how maybe there are some misconceptions, especially among us intuitives, about how complex their inner world can actually be, in a sense.
So I think I want to say really quick, just so we all know, that I kind of came up with keywords to help distinguish what these functions are. And the keyword for extroverted sensing is that SE seeks to impact its external environment, whether it's low vibe or high vibe, no matter what, it is seeking to both impact and engage with the external environment. So just as a bit of a refresher, SE is parallel of SE is like parallel of NE. They're like very different. Or would you say,
I feel like SE and NE are like parallel in that SE seeks to impact and NE does not necessarily seek that exact sort of impact.
I almost said opposite, but I always get confused by like, there's almost like two different definitions of opposite. One is like when it's two sides of a coin, but pretty much SE and NE have nothing in common, and that's what I wanted to...
Yeah, they're kind of running on separate train tracks as they navigate the world. So parallel is this visual, so think of it that way. Which I realize that the people listening won't know what I'm doing, but I was holding my hands up. In vertical ways. Whoops, sorry guys.
I just was going to say that NE seeks to imagine, whereas SE seeks to impact. And you can kind of understand SE by understanding what it's not, and what it's not is imagining the ideas of the now. It is instead engaging with the now. Not imagining, engaging. So that's one way to look at it. And another way to look at it is that SI is the inverted version of, they're both sensing functions. And SI seeks homeostasis. So while SI is like, I'm trying to keep myself safe, I'm trying to keep a solid foundation for my sensory self, SE is like able to take risks, or like able to revert from that.
It's able to like let go of its homeostasis
Yeah.
in bits and pieces and just and
Let
okay,
go
so
of, honestly, let go of comfort in order to like achieve. It's more comfortable with discomfort. But
yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
saying?
I feel like I feel like, okay, so now that we've defined it, I feel like we should kind of unpack what it would mean to impact. Would you mind saying the definition of introverted intuition, Megan?
Yeah. I was actually about to say that the other one, just so we kind of know, SE impacts, NE imagines, SI seeks homeostasis, whereas NI is, introverted intuition, and the key word that I use for it is to understand. So the reason why SE even wants to impact its external environment is so that it understands. And if we're talking if we're talking about SPs like ESTP, ESFP, ISTP, and ISFP, they might seem like, if you're an NE user, by the way, their behavior might seem very just random to you. But it's because they're directly engaging so that they can then understand, but their NI is like more subconscious, so they may or may not even be aware of what they're doing. But I also just want to bring up too that in like Linda Barron's and Dario Nardi's definitions of SPs is the SE, they talk about how SE is really good at dealing with crisis situations. And I think that is kind of goes hand in hand with how SE is more comfortable with the discomfort. It is able to jump in there and impact, like even in times of crisis, even at the absolute worst times, they're able to let go of their homeostasis. And I mean, metaphorically, you could think of them honestly as like a firefighter chasing the fire, putting it out. Like honestly, and even just if you want to think about like the idiom of constantly putting out fires, I find that SPs, if they don't develop their NI, then they might find themselves in a position where they're constantly putting out fires. They don't know how to get the fire to stop, but they know how to put it out.
So like let's unpack the connection between impact and understanding, because I feel like a high vibe SE will seek to impact and also hone in on what it understands from that impact and use it to create future impacts, and like kind of like understand the pattern that it's seeing in terms of how its impacts resonate in a long-term sense. Whereas I think lower vibe SE, in a sense, may like either like they may like impact the environment without really engaging with their introverted intuition and understanding what exactly is going on and what they're doing, and like maybe take time to reflect on what it is they're doing. And so because it will be so not conscious to them, so they may be like kind of running around like chicken with his head cut off on a lower vibe sense. In a high vibe sense, the risks they take will be, in a sense, more calculated. Whether or not it seems that way to other people is totally probably subjective, but at least to them, they will know the reasoning behind why they're doing something. And I guess I've noticed that, more, I guess, like SPs who are older will seem to be able to explain their reasonings behind things and how they see the world. But like younger SPs, or I guess maybe most of the ones won't necessarily know how to verbalize it, even though they'll have some reason. I mean, everyone does have a reason to do things, but SPs might not have like I guess the younger ones compared to older ones might not fully understand enough their understanding to be able to put it out there.
So that's connected to, or go ahead.
I was going to say that I feel like it's very different, and this is very counterintuitive for especially NPs to understand, because I feel like I don't really have to fully understand all the ins and outs of an idea or concept before I open my mouth and engage with it. But a lot of SPs I have come into contact with, they'll need to like ask questions to try and grasp it before like they can fully quote like engage with what I'm saying. So in a sense,
can you sort of give an example? Because I want to just say really quick, just to pause, is that where SPs, they will jump in and engage with the object to figure it out themselves. They won't talk about what they know with any, it's like they like will jump in and get started, get hands-on with hands-on learning.
Sensory things,
but they won't necessarily know because their NI is lower. Whereas for you, it takes you a while to gear up to actual action, but you will open your mouth about it, as you said.
Like, yeah, I will. Right? I like talk of a bigger game than what I'll be doing. And SPs are almost like, if I'm not doing it, why would I even talk about it?
Yep, SE likes to walk the walk. That's for sure.
Yeah. And like, I guess like, it's like interesting because I'll like volunteer a really out there idea and I'll just watch like SPs kind of shut down a little bit if they feel like I'm not equipped to like, I don't have any previous foundational knowledge about this. So they'll like be like hesitant to engage. And it's like a little frustrating sometimes for me because on the other hand, they want to drag me out and go like do things in the wild. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that because I don't feel like I'm prepared for that. So in a sense, I've historically, as an NP, not had as many SP friends, but recently I've kind of noticed some more SPs who are interested in, I guess, philosophizing and intuiting about the world, but need an NP friend to pull them out and like get them to share their NI. And so I guess I see like it depends on which realm you're talking in, where like SPs will be very like go-getter when it comes to like the physical world, like doing extreme sports, like I don't know, like trying to like do an action plan of some sort to like go and engage in a physical activity. But when it comes to like, let's sit down and have like a deep talk about like how our lives really are going, like SPs will really have to be like, in a sense, able to engage their understanding and have something to like be able to do that.
Well, I just realized something about that. So if the lower vibe SE is constantly putting out fires and is running around like a chicken with its head cut off and doesn't have any foresight to what's going to happen, then the higher vibe, they know from direct hands-on experience and they walk the walk and they've done it. They've been there, done that, and they know whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's their job or they're even with a relationship, whatever task at hand, they have done the work through their hands-on experience to actually know, to where I'm realizing now from listening to you that maybe it might seem like SPs are not as open to your ideas, but they probably are open to an expert who is talking about what they've learned through their experience. So it's not that they are never wanting to find new ideas or never wanting to learn. But let's say if you are like talking about philosophy, an SP might think, well, who are you to know? How much philosophy have you done? How much work have you done with it?
They don't like playground philosophy where NPs just start waxing poetic about something like, oh, Kesha's lyrics are actually so deep. And like some SPs will be like, what's the point of this conversation? I'm not learning anything for my NI in a long-term sense to understand. But if we're like getting into something that has a real world application, the SP will perk up and be like, oh, so it's
all
like,
about real world application.
Yeah, exactly. And they also ask to see the real world application if they're, on a mood to try and stretch their brains, or I have to give it to them in a real world application first before they'll be like, oh, okay, go on. Like, so
I just want to say, or go ahead.
They're very good at listening in that sense when you tease them with, here's a real world application. But if you don't, and you're just kind of talking about things in a vacuum, they're really going to like disengage really fast.
I just was going to say that I don't think that SE is necessarily going to care more about hierarchy than other things. It's not that. So whenever I was saying that an SE user might look at you and be like, well, why do you know? It's not that they're looking at hierarchy in an arbitrary sense, but I mean, there's also the stereotype of SE sort of like being opportunistic or like caring about status. I think what it really is that SE is going to trust you if you have direct hands-on experience doing that thing.
Yes. It's not like I have to have a PhD or something. It's more like my real-world experience needs to be explicitly spelled out.
Yeah, and it's not like you need any sort of clout, or it's not like that you need a fancy job necessarily. It's not that. I mean, like, those could be indicators to SE that you must have done enough work in order to get there. But yeah, because okay, both NPs and SPs are the type that you could be sort of distracted by the shiny and new, but you do it differently. And I guess I just want to say that I think that really intelligent, curious SPs, they might listen to lots of podcasts and hear like straight from the mouths of people who have done it, you know?
Yeah, they love podcasts if they're like really interested in developing their intuition. And they also seem to resonate more with like if you say an idea and they like saw it in action in a movie, that's also real world experience for them to actually have something to latch onto. They don't have to have experience it for themselves or hear about you experiencing it. Even like, remember that scene in that movie where blah 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 happened, is the way to like open them up to describing an idea, because they really do have to see it first to truly believe it.
I'm realizing the parallels now of how I do this too, and I kind of did not even realize that I do this until after I came up with this idea. But just the idea that it's sort of like, all right, you are doing this thing, you are in this place. How did you get there? Tell me about your experience. Like, that's like, I'm very curious about things like that. Like, tell me the things that you did. What did you learn from how you engaged with the sensory world, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like kind of the NI from that. But
I do feel like it was a learning point because I've been trying to develop more of my NI because I really believe I use it in a sense, not very well. But, and I realized that what I like doing is I look for the philosophy behind all my role models and how they got to where they are and what was their like philosophy as they were going along. Because if I don't know their philosophy, I can't interpret correctly the sensory output that they had in terms of what they did, because maybe not every thing is for me. And I guess to tie that back to SE, I feel like SE users always want to know real world application, because without it they can't even like glean the NI from that. And they can't just like have you say a concept and they just take your word for it and like come up with their own idea to counter it. They have to like have you actually break it down into what does that look like for like here in this moment. And I think that's actually pretty important in terms of a grounding mechanism for me as an NP, because if my ideas are just always ideas and there's no real world application, in a sense, I do wither faster than I think. And I think SPs remind me of that. And I think people don't give SPs enough credit for like kind of like holding down the fort of making sure ideas are actually able to be executed before they're dwelt on for so long they never germinate and bloom.
Yeah, like the ideas don't really hold unless they have tried it and that it like works, like, or like that it like fits reality. But I have a question for you. So to sort of dive into like the lower vibe, high vibe, can you tell me from your perspective as an NE Dom, what is it that you really hate about SE, like at its worst? Like, can you sort of paint a picture of like SE at its worst?
It's funny because for me, it hits home a lot because I actually have an ISFP father. And growing up, communication was very hard for both of us because he would never know what the crap I was talking about. It was very invalidating because I would be talking about something and like the intuitive principle of its long-term potential impacts, like wanting NI from someone out there. And he would like be triggered by it because he has enough like NI to like know it's important but not know how to engage with me. And I would just feel kind of like dropped. So I guess like in a sense, like not saying that is low vibe SE, but like it reminds me of times when I've encountered low vibe SE in the wild where like I feel like they just will not entertain anything I say unless it has a real world application, and they blatantly like refuse.
And can you explain what's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, like just for me at least, it's hurtful. But if you want to say like in an objective sense, I feel like sometimes you have to imagine and take the risk of entertaining that idea and going down a rabbit hole with it before you can take action, which is why like for example, if you're trying to prevent something from happening, you have to like use that imagination to imagine the scenarios that could potentially be in some way. And if you don't, you'll end up in a situation that could have easily been prevented. Like sometimes I'll like try to warn an SP friend that, oh, if you like do that, I bet this will happen. And they'll be like, you're crazy, nah. And it does happen. I'm just like, oh my God, and now I have to like fish you out of it or something because, or I don't know how to fish you out of it because my NE is only good at preventing things because I'll imagine what's going to happen. I don't know how to actually fix them once they're here. The good thing is, SE can generally fix itself once it's in hot water, but it'll be frustrating for me to watch because it'll be like, you could have like not even had to fix it in the first place. And so I guess like in a sense, it can always like end up running itself into stuff that could have been prevented and actually like getting more bruises over time. That's not
I have to tell you, I think I used low vibe SE today.
Yeah.
This is kind of a good metaphor, is that I saw a pothole that was like a big puddle. It's snowing and a pothole right in front of me. I drove right over it. I did not move around.
That's so funny.
I think, honestly, would you agree that low vibe SE is like, you'd rather just like go through it than like think about the consequences?
Yeah, because I'm like,
I don't know.
Oh, what's bigger, you or the pothole? Well, we don't want to find out, do we? So let's not even test fate that way. Like that's like what I would think when I drove around the pothole.
And I say that because, okay, as an ENFJ, my SE is in the third slot, so it's kind of like a child that is like overconfident. So it's like I am like, as an NJ, I have like the foresight of things, but I can sometimes perceive NE as being too paranoid for no reason, whereas I would say lower vibe SE is almost like not paranoid enough and just like drives right through the pothole.
Oh my God. Yeah, like SE is not prudent enough sometimes when it's like low vibe, and I'll just go in and like do stuff. And like that can stuff can like get you killed if you don't use foresight. Like you literally like die.
I know the best example of low vibe SE.
Okay, go ahead.
The CEO of Firefest.
Oh God.
Low vibe SE, if you guys do not know, you should watch the documentary on Netflix about Firefest.
When I was watching the documentary where like this dude has this idea to create a big festival but does not actually like put any intuitive planning into it, I was just like, how did you not know that this is going to fail very badly? Like I was just like, what?
I think that for him, so the whole deal is that he's like, if you can dream it, you can do it. You just got to force your way through it. You just got to dive in and figure it out. You just got to figure it out. And like sometimes honestly that works. But like not at that time. Like he clearly did not think through the idea. He clearly was
I was like, wow.
He clearly was overconfident. But like literally he sold tickets for this music festival and claimed that all these influencers were going to be there before they even started construction on making sure that, everything was, I guess you just have to watch.
The logistics were not there.
The logistics weren't there.
It's so funny because I know so many ENFJs who are like really into event planning, and it's like the complete opposite. It's like their worst nightmare. Like, why didn't you think about this and this and this and this? I'm like,
so. Isn't it called Murphy's Law? Or maybe I'm thinking of something else. If something could
go wrong, will go wrong.
Yeah, like what could go wrong will go wrong. That's like very NE and SI, isn't it?
I feel like I actually don't know, because when I hear that, I'm like, it sounds like it's like an NI user using NE, in my opinion.
Maybe.
Because I'm like, it sounds like too certain to say that what could go wrong will go wrong, because my confusion is always, I don't know what could go wrong, because what could go wrong might not go wrong. I don't know. And then like NI is just like,
maybe maybe it's NI, because for example, with the Firefest thing, I never in a million years would buy the ticket or would sell tickets until the thing was completed. Because for me, I just expect that something is going to go wrong. Like I always know it's something wrong. Yeah.
It feels like an NI user saying that the flow of life in an SE way tends to be this. And I feel like P's would go both types of Ps, NPs and SPs would fight against that, and then it would be
Yeah,
wrong.
because like for example, pretty much the problem with the Firefest guy is that he did not leave enough room for like speed bumps. Like he did not leave that room. Where I think the NJs, when they have a goal, they expect speed bumps like throughout. And I think that, higher vibe SE like knows through experience like what speed bumps to anticipate, right? Like the guy did not have the experience to be running a music festival on an island. Like he did not know what he was doing. And I think that maybe that's like where like NPs, like you can sort of become an expert and like understand everything, yet you've never even like lifted a finger to try. On the other hand,
I do like secondhand experience by like observing other people and then like not making their mistakes. It's like people don't realize this about me. Like, but I'm like, yeah, I definitely have not done half the stuff you think I must have done to get to where I am. And as people are like, what? You just thought about it for long enough, and then you just came up with an answer, and I'm just like, yeah.
yeah, and I think like on the other end of that, like SE, like especially low vibe SE, like doesn't think it through like enough.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I also have something I've been thinking about, which is like, in a sense, like, like I've been thinking about how there's also like a version of low vibe SE that I'm observing, especially in ISPs, where like they will like, do like a TINI or FINI loop and not like do things if they've never like done them before, in a sense, because they'll want like they'll want to know the real world application to an idea before they like engage with it, in a sense. So I guess like at the same time you have like crusaders who just go in guns blazing. Especially I feel like I resonate more with that as like an SE dom thing. Like ESPs will do that. I'm actually not sure if ISPs will do that, because just as NE doms will just go and blurt out ideas in a vacuum and like not curate them, I feel like IMPs don't do that as much. So I guess I'm not too sure how ISPs like interact with like a lower vibe SE, but sometimes it almost seems like, I guess in my life at least, I know an ISP who, like it's like kind of like the idea is that if you don't entertain like certain ideas before you have to do them, you might like not even want to do them. So it's kind of like, I feel like, okay, in the case of that guy from Firefest, he's been burned so bad by the whole drama happening that he'll never probably do that again, in a sense. Like he'll never.
Actually, so I want to know what you think about this, is that I would assume that most people would take what happened with him, like if you were him, take it as a failure and probably humble yourself a little, right? Well, even though there was literally a trial against him where he was going to like go to jail, he started another fraudulent company.
Well, I guess like to me,
try and get out of it.
That's so funny, because to me, I feel like it's like not like, it's kind of like his TI would probably be certain he knows how to prevent that thing from happening that happened last time, in a sense, to go and have, the audacity to go and start another one.
I don't think that he did. Because, okay.
But like, no, I'm saying he thinks he knows how to prevent that from happening again, but he actually doesn't know because he probably didn't think about it like in an NI way intensely enough.
So can I go on a tangent, or were you going to finish what you were saying about ISPs?
You go on your tangent, actually.
Okay. I was just going to say, so now let's connect this to the higher vibe SE. Is I've realized that higher vibe SE is very good at dealing with failure. And that's why they're honestly able to learn from their mistakes. They're able to learn through trial and error, and they're able to be the first ones to honestly be brave enough to get started on something. Because for many people, that's the hardest part. For me, the hardest part about starting a new venture, well, is the getting started. Like, that's very hard for me. And also higher vibe SE, they're like, let's just figure it out. Like, they're able to figure it out. They're able to push through, and they seem to have a lot of grit, which is very, very useful. And so, for example, like in entrepreneurship, there are going to be challenges. And so a lot of times SE users, they are the type to stumble and fall and then get back up stronger and then fall again and then get back up stronger and honestly enjoy the process because they're learning each time. But what I was going to say, then compare that to for the Fire Fest guy, is I feel like on the low vibe SE end, it could be an inability to be humble in the sense where you just get back up and say, I'm going to try again, whenever really it's not time to get up. It's time to sit down and have a long, hard think about why the hell you fell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
I was going to say, like, I feel like that's totally true of like SE dom. I'm just like, the idea is that maybe for an ISP, like once burned, twice shy, I think actually would apply a little bit more almost to those people comparatively. Like, I feel like what I'm trying to say is that, like, on one hand, NPs will like maybe not even have been burned before, but just never want to get burned and so never do anything about like certain issues. So like for me, like I will just never want to try sometimes because the principle of possibly failing will scare me away from that. Versus I feel like for SPs, sometimes if, you know, they fail hard enough and they don't know how to get back up, they'll also like maybe not do something, but it'll be like kind of caught up in like the NI of like, I don't really know how to like, you know, get around this kind of thing.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Reminds me of this ISTP guy that I used to date that was like afraid to talk to girls and like was like so certain that one thing went wrong that it was going to go wrong again or something like.
Wait. Yeah, like that is a good example. Can we like kind of unpack that actually? Because I feel like this has actually been a point of personal confusion for me because I feel like I've started to see just throughout the types of very stark differences between if you use it as your DOM function and your OX function.
Wait, so are you thinking that that's what your little ISFP? Wait, so you think maybe your ISFP friend is suffering from that?
I do think though that like I like, because actually ironically I was first thinking of this idea because I used your ISTP person as a point of reference for this because I know far more ESPs than ISPs, but the way they use SE and how it's low and high vibe manifests is so different. And how about this? Before we get into that, what I want to say is that I would say a good way to sum it up for low and high vibe is how much the NI of the SP is engaged in learning from its mistakes. So an ISP, in a sense, like they'll care more almost about their NI because it will be so much more salient that they'll like want to engage and understand. But I feel like either way, like SE that's going off the charts just by itself is disconnected from NI understanding, and higher vibe SE has integrated the SE impact and NI understanding and can like use them as a package deal to navigate the world. And ISPs and ESPs may struggle anywhere along the spectrum, like in a sense. Does that, like, would you say that's about right?
Yeah. And like, I would just say too that like, both, like no matter what, SE wants to like figure it out. And so
figure it out like via impact in some way. Like they really care about impact no matter what, even if they're not literally, but yeah.
Maybe like, okay, so for example, it's just the idea that this ISTP guy, like, I remember thinking of it as like his polar like blind spot NE was unable to imagine the possibility that he might like bump into some other like romantic interest one day or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's so funny. Yeah, because like NTPs on the other hand might be like, yeah, whatever. Like it's so
like very fixated on like this one. But okay, wait, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say like what I want for us if we unpack like the ISP neuroticism about that is to make sure to debunk because to debunk like its opposite, because I feel like INFPs also like hesitate when dealing with like romantic interests in a similar way to him, but I want to debunk that they're not the same process.
I think I get it. So I think I get it. So I realized something about me compared to an INFJ that I realized was probably because of my tertiary SE. So here's an example: is both of us we're at a Panera Bread, and we assume that there's going to be Wi-Fi. We both have work to do, and we both like the INFJ is looking on the Wi-Fi for it and is like intensely looking, and I'm like, I guess I'm gonna go ask the person, because like I'm like, it's easier to just go ask than to keep looking. The INFJ is like determined.
Dude, that happens to me and my INFJ friends too, where I'm like,
And I was like, well, I'm just gonna go ask. And then they were like, yeah, I think we have Wi-Fi. It should be like free. And then I like went back and I was like, I don't think they have Wi-Fi, because like none of these are free, and all of those are locked. And they said that if they have it, it would be free. So they don't have it. She told me is that it seems like I give up too easily on things, where I feel like my SE is like willing to try a different option.
yeah, like close all the options smorgasbord and so just move on.
So that's actually something that I was gonna say about higher vibe SE, is that they're able to cut their losses easily and just go to the next thing. But I think like maybe from an INFJ perspective, or someone with lower SE, like it could look like I am giving up. But I think it's like, I need to find this new option. But like, I wonder if for ISPs, if they have failed at one thing, then they'd rather just get through life in another way. If that's like a lower vibe SE, like if an ISFP or ISTP like fails, like dating girls or something, maybe their way of being confident on top of it is, all right, well, I'm just gonna have a killer career, whatever.
Yeah, like they just never deal with it again. They just like, go, okay, right?
Do you see how I'm making that connection, or like, does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. How are you applying it to that situation with the ISTP? Are you saying that when he got rejected once, he just never tried again or something?
Well, I was realizing that to the perspective of someone who uses less SE than me using what I thought was more SE to try and solve the problem seemed like giving up. When it's like, all right, let's find a new option, is like kind of what I was trying to do. Is like, oh, doesn't look like there's actually Wi-Fi. Let's like maybe go somewhere else, or let's like try and use a hotspot. Like I just like moved on. And like from my perspective, it seemed like the INFJ was like still like, oh, I need to restart my computer. I need to do this. Like, it's got to be there. And she's like, I'm determined to find it. And it's like, okay, sure. But like, I could like move on easily with that stuff. Mm-hmm. And like,
but then, an ISP moves on with entire areas of life.
Yeah, well, like, I'm wondering if, like,
yeah.
I'm wondering, like, if it's a more of an SE thing in general to, like, try and go seek a new, like, reality to engage with, where, like,
yeah,
like, on the lower vibe end. Yeah, I don't know.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. And it's funny because, like, in a sense, like, I will get, because, gosh, I'm like trying to figure out like where I do or don't relate to that. And like in the Panera case, I'm just like, dude, I would have never like been in this position, because I would have either like picked a spot that I know has Wi-Fi, or if it's a new spot, be prepared with like 5 action plans in case it doesn't. AKA, how willing am I to drive somewhere else to get Wi-Fi? How willing am I to just sit down and enjoy my lunch and not have Wi-Fi? Like, I would have weighed all of those, been on Yelp, research before the problem even arose in that case.
Yeah, like, so that's so...
also because I really, in a real life sense, resonate with the dilemma of, well, I guess my SI always knows, okay, if we're going to try to get work done, these are the components that are always going to be like up in the air. So we're going to like nail down what we're going to do with each component in each scenario. And I just see that instantly.
Our day went wrong because we assumed that we would go get coffee near where her car was. And neither of us looked up where the coffee was, or if there was any what. And we literally drove to like 3 different coffee shops that were in the middle of grocery stores, and we're like, no. And then
see, whenever that happens to me once, or if I hear about, not even like happening to me once, but if it happens to someone else I know, I go, I never want that to happen to me. So I start doing like my research. Dude. Like, I just have a practice of like hearing about other people's experiences. Like, even this makes me cringe and wants me to hold tighter to my routine of like, find Wi-Fi. Also, Panera might not be a Wi-Fi spot because I also have this archive of times I've literally been to a Panera and been disappointed. And I'm like,
really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's so funny because you literally even know is that my archive was that I remember specifically working with you at Panera.
No, but like that was like that only Panera. Other Paneras I've been have not been. So that's why I'm like funny, because if I were there with you and the INFJ, I could have told you this isn't gonna work, guys. The Paneras never have Wi-Fi, and then I Google it to prove to you my SI, and all these Yelp reviewers might be like, "Yeah, there's no Wi-Fi Panera" or something. Like that is how deep it goes to how I will go prepared. Well, it seems really nitpicky, but it saves a lot of energy from like having my day be like derailed. Because if I think about it, I don't relate to like the idea that people like, not the idea, but the phenomenon of like people saying one small thing can like ruin their whole day. I'm like, that never happens to me because I always think the small things are going to ruin my day.
I think that NJs can derail a day pretty quickly.
Yes, I was thinking about that. Because people like NJs really do get in this like, oh my gosh, it was bad and now I'm in a bad mood. Traffic today. I'm in a good mood now.
It's because of our inability to deal with the SE. Because honestly, we have low vibe SE.
It's funny because like everyone always talks about NPs being like super clumsy and like all over the place, but I'm like, it depends on what. Because I focus on creating a container to give myself room to be all over the place.
Unless you've witnessed two NJs crying for hours trying to find a coffee shop.
It's
for like literally 3 hours. You don't know what it's like.
When you leave NJs alone. It's so funny because my SI isn't even that great, but I was like,
if there's an NJ amongst other normal folk, we're sages. We're wonderful sages.
And it's like, I'm like, here, like, I found you Wi-Fi. And then you're like,
and then
you too.
If it's like one NJ around, quote, normal folk, we're seen as sages, then when you leave us alone, we don't know how to whip our own ass.
But okay, to bring that back, actually, I have anecdotes of like hiking with my favorite ISFP. We went hiking and like, he got drunk the night before and woke up hungover and picked me up 2 hours late. And I was so annoyed because the night before I had the option to get like, go out. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to because I'm going to be too tired or hungover to like go hiking if I do that. And he's like, oh, it's going to be fine. And I was just like sleepy the whole time, but like trying to make the most of it. And I'm just like, you could have prevented this, bruh. And like, then also, and also we were driving and we were trying to find parking, and there was like a free parking lot, like a 10-minute walk from the trailhead. And then he's like, let's see if there's more parking up there. So we drive up, and then like there's parking like right at the entrance, but like there's like a fee, but you have to like leave the fee on your dashboard or something. And we're like, that's really sketchy. And he's like, I'm gonna just put the money inside my windshield so no one steals it, so they can see I paid. I'm like, but then they can't get the money. He's like, no, trust me, it's fine. I'm like, we could just park down there so we don't get a fee because they have expensive tickets around here. He's like, it's fine. And so then we go on the hike, we come back, and there's a $70 parking ticket on the window. And I'm just like, bro, we had just thought about this for 5 more minutes and decided what we were willing to trade off. This wouldn't have happened.
INFJs do that too. That's happened to me. But I just wanted to say, I'm realizing that every single time I've traveled with you, and we have gone to brand new cities where neither of us has ever gone, you never mind parking. In the sense, okay,
what do you mean?
I'm realizing that every time you ask yourself, like, do I want to go get food? Do I want to go this? You're always like prepared for the fact that you have to park. And I know that's really like a stupid thing to say, but like you never get even living in LA, you never get frustrated with the parking because you've like already asked yourself, like, do I care about this enough to deal with the potential of all this parking before you can go?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I have a question. I'm realizing that I feel like parking in LA is probably an INJ nightmare, and there's probably been several.
It so is.
I was probably going to say, like, how many INFJ or INTJ friends have you witnessed break down and cry over parking?
Okay, well, my INFJ best friend in LA always the first thing we do when we're gonna go out or do something is she goes, parking. Like it's like been conditioned to like stand there because of so much trauma in SE. And so, but like for me, it won't like ruin my life to be thinking about parking. I'll just naturally be like, la la la, do I want to go? Okay, is parking going to be bad? Okay, that area of town, parking isn't that great, but how much do I want to go? I want to go. So I'm going to choose to not stress about SI like that, because even if parking sucks, I'll just take an Uber or I'll do this. Like I think out everything, but she goes, parking, I have to drive. I'm like, you can just not drive. She's like, but then money. I'm like, it's like, I'm like, well, what do you want, man? Just think about what your FI wants.
You know,
or like your FI wants. And she's just like, and I'm like, okay, all right.
This is kind of a tangent from the video, but it is related. And I think, you know, it could have to do with SE too. I've realized lately that, you know, for NJs or really anyone with NISE, because let me say this first, is that I think that SE, like low vibe SE, thinks that sleep is for the weak. And, you know, low vibe SE is like, I don't need to eat right now. I'm doing this. You know, or like, it's like really, really bad at taking care of itself. It doesn't mind stress, but then it like literally stresses itself.
Yeah, like, oh my God, my NJ friends always complain to me that they like have insomnia or can't like get to sleep. And I'm like, do you have like a routine? And they're like, no. And then like at a certain point they get annoyed that I keep asking them all these SI questions. And then they go, well, do you have a routine? I'm like, no, but I know my body and I fall asleep standing up. I can fall asleep anytime. So that's why I don't need one. But
I don't know my body. Who's that?
Who is she? We don't know.
Who is she?
It's so funny because
what does it feel like to know your body? What is it?
Oh, well, you see, because I have lower, like my SI is like 4th, so I don't notice it. But when I do, I'm just like, it's hungry, and there will be this many hours until it needs to eat. I'm just gonna make the most of. It's already been 2 hours now. Like it's like I'll be able to pee on a road trip, like on time. I'll know in advance because I'll feel it. Like
I mean, you've seen me. I don't feel it building at all. You've seen how I like will go, I have to pee right now or else I'm going to pee my pants.
And that's why I have no problem becoming the person. Like, have you ever noticed how when we take a trip together, I'll go, Megan, do you have to pee? Because I know that you're going to have to pee in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Don't do it now. I don't want to be the person to pull over on the side of the road when there's nothing happening.
Oh, you take care of me.
Yeah, and then like you'll be like, so bitchy. And like I don't mind being that because I'm like, I'm looking out for everyone's comfort here or something, because my NE will be so anticipatory. I'll be like, I don't believe you. And I think it's also because I have FI that I'm just like, your FI will thank me in the long run when you don't feel like you're gonna burst or something. You have to pee in the woods in a like freaking tow truck area or something.
Well,
I just
realized
like all my NJ friends, because I have many NJ friends now, I'll be like, have you been sleeping? And they'll be like, no. And I'm like, why? Or like, you should be going to sleep now. And they're like, no. And I'm like,
I haven't eaten today and it's almost 4 p.m.
Yeah, I haven't eaten today either, but I decided that it was worth it because I had so many other things to do. So I'll be like, I'm going to take the L. It's fine. But I think that it's funny because with SE users in general, they'll suddenly become very whitey and fussy. And I'll be like, why didn't you prevent this? Because like when I'm hungry, I always know that I asked for it by not preparing in advance. So I'm like, all right, I'll take the L. And I think that SE users are like not able to like moderate their own trade-offs in that sense.
So I want to talk about something I've realized about NJs, and I think it is directly connected to low vibe SE. And I realized that I think that it's almost like we're constantly trying to outsmart our bodies. So
those mere mortals.
Like, for example, we will withhold things from ourselves. Like, let's say if I'm craving sweets, I'll say, well, you shouldn't want sweets. You're going to eat this. You're going to eat this salad. It's like so disconnected from my body. It's like every single action I take is based on an NI ideal. It's not based on my body whatsoever. And so sometimes it's, you're going to wake up at this time because you care about this job. And my body's like, or it's like, you're going to stay up late because you're really enjoying this show or because you really care about this friend. My body's like, no. And it's like, I'm managing myself based on the NI ideal of things Or like,
That's
okay,
so interesting.
even like sometimes it's like I withhold cravings for myself when it comes to food, or I withhold rest for myself when it comes to that, or even like with the parking thing, for example, like it's like I would withhold paying for an Uber because I would think that that's stupid, or like little things like that that like would be like minor comfort. Like for example, like it's like walking 2 to 3 blocks or taking an Uber. Like I think it's very hard for an NJ in particular to justify paying for an Uber because it's not because of how much money they make, but I think an NJ just in general would think, I could walk. But we always say
It's like, I know how to use my
things.
body. Yeah, you know how to use it.
We always say things like that, and then those things add up, and I don't think we realize how it adds up in the sense where, gosh, what am I saying? Like it's hard to, even if it's like $7 for an Uber or walking 3 blocks, like we would think, I could walk. Why would I pay $7? But then what we don't realize is that how it could add up is that it could like ruin our whole night and like make it not even fun, to where like you have to ask yourself like, is the $7 worth like having a fun time without any stress at all?
Like I feel like I do that all the time in a sense as an NP. And I guess without the SE of I can do it myself, I actually think I give up too easily in a sense, because I think of all the trade-offs. And for me, it's like I think of the body as like something you must pay debts to at all times. So lately, like
paying debts to.
Yeah, like I feel like this body you have on loan, you know, and if you don't treat it right or if you don't listen to it on many occasions, eventually you're gonna have to pay up, man. Like your health is gonna suffer. Even like the mental health is like connected kind of to the body. So I guess like to me, I'm like, I have to figure out a way to figure out my body's system and how it works so I can still do what I want, but not like get, you know, all these like fees. You know what I mean? Like I'm talking about an intuitive system of like.
I think NJs try and outsmart their body by like being stronger than it and having their mind being stronger than it and telling your body what to do. But like I think that SPs might even relate in the sense of like SPs would like walk home drunk from a bar like blocks away, and like it's like, oh, but what if you get hurt, or like, oh, it's dark, like are you not worried about that? And see, that's how I think that like SPs are like known as being like really risky or something, or like they don't think of the consequences. They definitely don't think of the SI consequences either. Like I mean, NJs think of the consequences, but also like NJs might think, I don't deserve to get an Uber because it's only a few blocks and I should rough it. Even if they feel unsafe, even if they feel like, oh, it's dark, I feel unsafe, they do it anyway, and then their body's pissed.
It's funny because my dad, I don't even think of like as literal like the physical body, but I feel like when it comes to like taking care of like the self in general, I feel like SI starts to really value that even on a like quote more abstract level, I guess. Cause like, I think of like my body also as just me functioning in the world and it's like long-term health and happiness. Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, it's like, I think of like, okay, like for example, when I stay up late to talk to friends, even if I don't get a lot of sleep that night, I still end up waking up feeling decently refreshed almost in a sense, if it's a really good conversation. And so I've started to think of like, what is fueling my body, not just like food and like sleep. It's also like my genuine enjoyment of life is something I really value. And I genuinely enjoy life when I feel philosophically stimulated and refreshed. So that plays into my ability to value SI. So in a sense, I feel like it's really interesting when NJs stay up late and get cranky, but I will stay up late and it'll be almost the same as if I got a refreshing amount of hours of sleep depending on the activity I was staying up doing. Because if I feel like I wasted my night staying up late, I will be way crankier in the morning. But if I don't feel like I wasted my night at all, in fact, I got a lot done in solving an intuitive puzzle of my, I don't know, childhood traumas.
That's a good point.
I'll feel better. Like if I resolved an issue that was bothering my SI and preventing me from getting work done because someone philosophically cracked a code about me, I'll still feel rested. And that's something I don't think SIs would talk about a lot.
Well, I don't notice the difference, but I think that I think that NI is always more focused on cracking the puzzle and going with the flow, to where, like, I think it's sort of like that. I know that. Like, I know you and I have stayed up late many times talking about things, and we feel like we should, even though we're tired. And it's like, it was the right decision. And I, it's hard for me to know, like,
Well, I'm talking about in terms of cracking a code, because I'm not an NISE user. I'm talking about cracking codes for myself, as in I finally figured out how to like not feel so lonely with friends. And if I have a conversation that promotes that idea, it actually adds to my SI health, and I'll like wake up feeling better. So I'm trying to
yeah,
talk
but
about.
I've had that experience though too, where like I follow my NI and it ends up actually making me feel more rested, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm
I
not saying
can't
it's
tell the
something
difference.
that I feel like I'm just commenting on that I can tell the difference, but I'm sure you experience it too in a sense, because it's still like adding to like your body's like health, because it's part of, I think, the SI system of like really understanding something that's important to like you and your subjective sense of rest. So that's what I will say. I guess overall, it's like, to bring this back to like SE, I feel like in a way, like when SE and I integrate the understanding, they're paying more attention to things, and I think it kind of adds as it like reminds me of like a way of like being like mindful, like they're willing to like slow down and like think things through, because I guess like my INFJ friend is really good at like problem preventing in a
You
way.
know,
She's really taught herself that, and I feel like she's very good, honestly, NI and SE. It still stresses her out to use inferior SE, but she doesn't seem to like beat herself up about like life and derailing. She doesn't seem to like get caught in these cycles I see almost every other NJ in my life do.
do you think that all of these NJ things that I've been bringing up is directly connected to low vibe SE?
I think so. Because
I
at the
feel
same
like it is.
Yeah, because at the same time that like it was really annoying when that like ISFP and I were hiking and we got us another ticket. I was like, you could have prevented this. They still didn't. He didn't like beat himself up the way I feel like an INFJ would. He was like, yeah, whoops. I'm just gonna pay for this now because it's my fault. Like genuinely just rolled off the back. And so in a sense, I feel like it was like higher vibe SE to be like, oh,
Yeah.
whoops. And I feel like it's INJs who would be so freaking mad, and then I'd be like, oh, you're just gonna be so grumpy now. But like,
Yeah,
even
it's
though
because INJs do
yeah,
want to have the foresight to prevent things.
yeah, and it's funny because this guy does not have the foresight, but he's also kind of okay with that, like in a sense.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me something else about high vibe SE that I want to say is like, so I relate to the ISPs in the sense that our NI and SE is kind of balanced or like more even, because I would probably react similarly to him. I beat myself up in my head, but then I would say that. But I think that for high vibe SE, every time it takes a risk, it is okay with failing. So it's kind of similar to how for you like think through if I want to go to this place, what are the options, or like what are the
Yeah,
possibilities. Like
and
I
then
think
yes, and then even if I fail, I'm still like okay because I feel better about myself. I thought it through. Versus for him, he felt okay about himself because he didn't think it through, but he also knew he didn't think it through, so he was okay with that.
yeah, no, he was okay with the fact in the sense that he asked himself, all right, there's like a 90% chance I won't get a ticket, maybe 10% chance I will.
I'm like, no, those odds are so wrong. But
And
yeah.
then he's like, you know what? Do I like those odds? Yeah, I'll take those odds. And whenever
I'm just like, no, the odds are wrong.
well, maybe the odds are wrong, but you can never really know the actual odds because it either happens or it doesn't. And it's hard to know, like, if you got lucky or if that's what was going to happen anyway,
It's
or
funny
like if you got
because
unlucky.
it's funny because I care a lot about like learning to track those kinds of odds based on like if I know the area well, I'll know the odds of getting the ticket. But if I don't know, I'll be like, oh, frick, what do I want to do? Like, so
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just saying that I think the SE, it's always prepared to move forward. Like,
it really is,
like
yes.
even if it's not, if it didn't think about it, they're not going to beat themselves up. It's like, oh, well, I can't go back in time. I either paid the ticket and now I know not to park there. Like, that's
I
about
feel like
it.
I feel like SPs rarely like dwell on regrets, but they will freak out about what to do moving forward more. And
Yeah.
I'm like the opposite, where like until I process my regrets, if I have any, I can't even move forward. So that's something I feel like it's good though, because even when they're stressed, they're still thinking about the future. And even that in of itself creates a better future to think about it. So like, I need them in my life to like remind me to move forward. But I think we still do the same mechanism of like trying to think it through either way.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I'm like realizing.
I think the takeaway is that there's a lot more going on in the mind of an SP. Us NPs especially underestimate how differently our SI and NI work, and how the SP way of life is actually at its core somewhat wise at times.
So I wouldn't mind doing another episode of this. I'm not sure, but really as I'm talking about this, I'm just like, well, I feel like I have low vibe SE, so what do I even do? What do I even do to have higher vibe SE? I'm just curious.
We should have another. I feel like this topic is fun, and we should have more about it, because this is like a venue, or this is a window into also how NE and SI work, and how SE and NI work, and how in a way I also can sustain happiness through paranoia by illustrating the opposite of times. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, and like I know we talked about like the flaws of NJs in the NI low vibe video, talking about that sort of NI tunnel vision, but I don't think it's talked about often, like the fact of how NJs struggle with SE, or like could have bad SE.
I feel like the relationship between NE and SI and NI and SE isn't talked about that often. Like, for example, how I just explained to you how SI directly contributes to my happiness, because I can use these details to like formulate all these like escape plans from like crises. Like, I don't think that's talked about very often. I also don't think we really have anyone's ever really talked about how hard it is. Like, I loved the anecdote of you and the INFJ at Panera, because I'm like, these are such slice of life moments I've seen in my NJ friends that are never talked about. Like, you don't want to dwell on like, oh my God, I can't even like take care of myself in a sense.
Yeah, and it's like, how are you even supposed to convey that unless you're in the moment with the person? And like NJs, again, I've mentioned this, they're very idealized on the internet as being like these sages, but it's like, could you even imagine that we're so dramatic about little things?
Yeah, it's so funny to me because I have like so many more NJ friends now, and like what I am looking at them for is like, how are they struggling with SI? Because I find that is like the unexplored area. And it's so fascinating because it's like just it's striking to me. And I'm like, ooh, interesting. So
also, like, I think the way we struggle with SE is that it's like almost easier to like raise our voice or like snap than it is to prevent sensory problems with SI.
Yeah.
And NTJs too. NTJs are just as guilty.
I feel like NTJs are better at like maybe hiding the ways they're clumsy, but they still also struggle with SI things from what I can see.
I don't know.
No, I mean like in a sense where I feel like NFJs will be like, oh, whoops, I'm so clumsy. Like they'll be more upfront about it. But I have so many anecdotes about like, wow, honestly, I've had a whole flock of like NISE user friends.
I think NTJs are afraid of looking incompetent, and like NFJs are afraid of looking like like not compassionate, and so that's why they would be like, "Oh my gosh, oops, sorry, I bumped into you," because it's like,
oh, just no. Like, no. Yeah, we should definitely talk about it more though, because I feel like this is an important way to also unpack how we need sensing in our lives more, and I feel like the typology community is, you know, definitely geared towards a lot of intuitives who get into this stuff, but I feel like we need to send some sensor love, because I would not be anywhere without this SI helping us find parking. Also, I felt really validated when you were like, if I think about it, you always are prepared for parking. And I'm like, I always am. I didn't think about it.
I just want to say, I want to toot your own, I want to pat your back a little too, is that
yes, I love it when you do that.
Feel safe traveling to a new city with you, because I know that you will handle it and like I won't have to worry about it.
That's so funny, which is so funny. I'm not an SJ at the same time, but
I hate driving in new places. I cannot find where I'm going. I need to look at the map. Like once I know where I'm going, it's fine. But like I cannot multitask of like, oh, I need to find here, here, here. like whenever we were in Denver and like we would always drive back and forth and like we went to like Boulder and then to Denver and like everywhere and like I would have the worst day ever if I had to drive all that. But like you are always like, oh, you're always like, oh, well, we can go to coffee in this neighborhood and then in 2 hours we can go to this other neighborhood across the city. And I'm like, do you want to do that? And you're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. But like with my other NJs don't have really the energy to do that. Like whenever I try and do that of like with INFJs in particular, it's like, hey, what if we went to the city market and then later we went shopping? It would be like, let's just stick to one part of town like for
That's
the
so
day.
funny
like,
because my INFJ friend in LA, like one of the things she wrote she likes about me for my birthday was I'm always down. And,
yeah.
And then it's funny because all the NJs are like, she is always down. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
you are like, okay, actually, like this is kind of a weird side note, but remember the time in Minneapolis where we wanted to walk around in some area and you just like found a random thing and we Ubered to it and it happened to be just like one bar and there was nothing else. We were like surrounded by residential and you're like, well, I guess we could just start walking this way. And we walked for like 5 miles. Like how long did we walk?
I don't remember this because it happens to me all the time. It all blends together.
I was annoyed, but you didn't seem to mind. Like you were like I was really annoyed because we were like just walking like in one direction until we found like something to go. Like it's not even like we were hungry or like needed to go to a store. We just wanted to explore. But I remember like we were walking and I was frustrated because I didn't know, like, are we walking into a bad part of town? Like, what is this?
Wow, what an NFJ concern. But yes.
And I think that you were sort of like, well, I mean, just let me know, like, if you want to Uber somewhere else. And you're like, I mean, I'm just exploring.
I was just exploring. But yeah, it's funny because I've had a lot of like, I'm very good at, I think like, because I've been to a lot of cities by now, I'm like, okay, well, this is like the routine for like figuring out the best way to do things. I also have an anecdote about how my ENFJ friend pack her house because she's about to move. And it's funny because I'm stressed about organizing my room when I move in. But for her moving out, I just like felt myself snap into action where I'm like, first, let's take away all your clothes. Okay, let's see. First, you have to pack a week's worth of clothes because you're moving in 1 week. So you set those clothes aside for 1 week.
See, I never would be able to come up with that.
See, it's like my SI suddenly became useful because I usually think, I'm better at packing than unpacking is what I've realized. She's
really?
Yeah.
I'm better at unpacking, yeah.
Because we packed her entire room with our other NFP friend in 2 hours. Actually, okay, there's like maybe 30% left.
That's crazy. Okay, so every time I go on trips with my SFJ family members will be packed the night before, and they're always paranoid that I'm not packed and that I'm going to forget something. But what I have to do is I have to go through the whole routine of getting ready in the morning, and then every time I use something, then I pack it immediately after, or else I'll forget.
It's funny because I was just like, okay, you'll need this, do you need this? I just asked her about everything and she just answered and she was like, I didn't even know to ask myself these questions.
Yeah, I don't know either.
So she packed a week's worth of clothes. Then I just started going like, okay, if you take the clothes out, it will look like the closet is less full and it will give you energy. It's funny because it's like reverse Marie Kondoing almost, where it's like you're packing everything or something. And so I just helped her categorize, okay, and then next we're going to put this and this box size can have your little things go here, little things.
My mom always does that too.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've never used my SI in this way, but I was really impressed with myself because I was like, I didn't realize I'm that good at leaving. I'm
you know what?
good at packing up and leaving because I've moved so much.
Something I laugh about with like my mom, who's ESFJ, is whenever she's helped me move in places, she always ends up having like a box that's full of mismatched things. And she's like, this is the box of things where I didn't know where these things go.
Wait, why is that funny? Because that's also what I was doing. I was like, all these miscellaneous need to go here because I don't know what the fuck
I think it's just funny how she just goes to town I like how I always feel like a sim where like God didn't tell me what to click on, and I'm just like,
No,
like looking around.
her SE was like, I just want to like go in and do whatever, but I have no plan. My SI is like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's how I feel.
first this. Like I just like was like clothes because you have more of those because everyone has more clothes than virtually anything else unless I'm wrong. And I wasn't wrong. And then we were like, okay, now we're gonna take out all the hidden things because everyone always has more hidden things.
Hidden things.
Yeah, like hidden things in jars, hidden things in shelves in the back of your closet. I just basically just took everything and put
I
it
don't
on.
know what that. I don't know what my hidden things are.
Well, it's like if you have any things in storage or anything, basically, that's what it means. Like if you have like desk drawers, like I was like, because those are actually adding to the general quantity of things you own that we can't see. And her SE was just like, oh, whoa. And my SI was just like, yes, these are the questions I ask myself before I pack for a trip, before I'm like about to leave. I just started like honestly like slowly like migrating shit to my
That's
car.
funny because every time I move, I end up in like a breakdown crying at like,
Yeah.
it feels like an insurmountable task.
It's funny because I cry because I'm thinking about the future in which I have to actually unpack all of this.
I don't mind unpacking at all. That's crazy.
It's
Like
funny because
seriously.
packing is fun. Packing means I get to leave and I get to see my room slowly go from a kind of lived in place to like a non-lived in place.
Packing,
but then I go to my new room. I'm like, you expect me to live in this place? I'm like, shit.
unpacking for me is actually really fun because I get to put it where I like it and I get to like.
Well, see, I don't know where I like it, which is why I think it's very SENI to kind of know where you want things. Because I know my mom doesn't want to like move into a new house. She doesn't want to think about having to rearrange everything she owns now into a new place. She also hates packing it also too. Like I don't know, she hates everything. But like
I like unpacking because it's like I get to completely start from scratch. And like
it's funny because I also like cleaning more than cooking when I'm like with a friend and they're like, I'll cook and I'm like, I'll clean. Like I will make the mess go away or something.
Crazy.
Like it's so interesting. But yeah, I was like,
anyway.
My SI being like actually useful because I will know how to like compartmentalize things into like what do I need? Especially the part where I told her pack everything for a week and then you can just worry about everything else in the room because it will go now. Like, you know, and she was like, well, I guess it is like packing for a trip. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Anyways.
Yeah, and like we rambled a lot. I think I did want to just wrap up by saying though earlier that I think that it's hard to really see NJs when we're not on because we don't let people see it unless you're like very important to us. But that bad that SE, man, our bad SE and our non-existent SI can really mess with us. And like,
yeah,
I want to do another episode diving into the SE because I just don't really feel like I quite understand it. Or like I understand what SE is, but I don't quite know, at least within myself, like where I'm going and where I want to get away from.
And also maybe talking about how I see SE and contrasting with my SI is probably helping you realize things about your SE.
Oh, one thing I want to also end this on is that I feel like a lot of the flaws about SE that you hear about are maybe not even true. Like, a lot of NPs will say that SE is like overly opportunistic and like overly pushy and like all that.
Ooh, there's so much more we can unpack with the next episode.
And like, not that that's not true. I'm realizing now that really if you want to get a look at low vibe SE, you really should look at the NJs, which again, no one knows what that is. But no one knows what that actually is. But like the NE projection on what SE actually struggles with is like not accurate. And
I agree. I feel like it's like in relativity, it's always NE users that think SE is quote pushy and too much. But I guess ever since I've realized that sometimes I'm not enough, I started realizing it's actually not SE's problem. Sometimes it's just me being nitpicky.
And like, there's maybe a grain of truth in that, but like, even like, for example, like, even like talking about it as like shallow or like caring about like shallow things or something, like, I don't think it's helpful to tell an SE user in their path of growth, like, be less shallow. be
Yeah,
less
what the fuck does that
pushy.
mean?
Like, that doesn't necessarily mean
That
anything.
is not a course of action for someone to take. Like, I would just be like, I should just be less shallow today. I'm just gonna be that. Also, maybe NPs need to be less deep. Like, that's so hard.
Well, it's like, it doesn't make sense to say be less shallow, because really at the end of the day, if you're an SP, you're going to want to use your direct hands-on experience for something. You aren't going to want to
Yeah,
just
and
be in the
also,
clouds.
yeah, and
Like,
also, like, my SP friends, when they share NI with me, when we actually hit a point, they inspire me so much because they can kind of see how my SI can go wrong and help me actually redirect it even better than NJs at times. And
yeah.
when I told my ISFP friend that I found his insights mind-blowing, he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, and I was
Yeah,
just
and
like,
like I've had comments from like INFPs on my YouTube page, or I've had comments before where it's like SE is the reason why people exploit others in this world, and it's like, what? No, man. Like,
no.
without SE, there would be nothing happening. Like, you wouldn't get anything done, and it's like I understand like why NE, or I understand why SE rubs NE the wrong way. I just think that we have to be open to the fact that perhaps NE, you're not getting it quite right, and uh, obviously NE and SE have some things that they
Yeah,
can learn
and
from each other.
I also think that because SE doesn't have NE to explain its process in a way, like it doesn't have
Yeah,
extra intuition to like say it, it really is at the mercy of being kind of projected on and gaslit a little bit. And
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah,
it's funny because I, like, a lot of the SPs I know have said I validate them more than anyone they've ever met because I actually make them feel like they are smart and know things. And I'm like, that's because you know the things I don't know. And so I'm telling you, you know them, and then coaxing you into telling me them. And they're like, I don't think many people do that. I'm like, oh, shoot, that's very sad. But, like, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, well, thank you for watching. And also, if you guys want to be typed by Crystal and I, we do have 4 different tiers now of typing services that you can find that information below. I do have mentorship services you could look into. Yeah, thank you. Subscribe to the channel, the podcast, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay. Bye.